Because it's
Why
fucking
not? Hold on.
impossible to know.
Why? Wait, no. Hans,
No
why
one can be
wouldn't you?
sure how I'm
Why?
going to react.
No. You're constantly misremembering. I don't know. I'll give you credit. I'll say maybe you're misremembering. Let's say it goes south another time. All right? You keep trying. 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 And you keep trying. You don't just give up and say, you know what? Fuck it. It doesn't really matter. I'm just not going to care about this.
But
That's
like,
all
again,
I'm saying. You try the best you can do is all you can do, Hans. Yo.
Yo.
All right. First things first. We haven't gotten all the way through it. How do you feel it went?
I feel like there were definitely parts where he got me. I feel like there were moments where I feel like he was sort of being purposely obtuse, and I thought that was frustrating. I feel like you might see these later, and because I've had some time to think about this since, where I feel like it's impossible to know for a person whether they're always going to be comfortable saying no in the moment. And what I meant, and I wasn't, people are saying I'm just like a bare bones hedonist for like these specific points. But what I would say for like my position on this, right, would be that you have you can make a reasonable, threat assertion of whether you want to engage in this sort of stuff. And and I would say the baseline for me and like allowing someone to do that is if they can not like obviously rape somebody on purpose or by accident, and then be able to communicate either beforehand or during. And because I think the standard of being willing to have a verbal confrontation is probably too high for a lot of people. And I wouldn't be comfortable saying that you have to be able to know that with 100% certainty, because you honestly don't. I don't think any person could ever say with 100% certainty that, yo, I am so sure that I am just going to be like, Giga Chad, yo, stop raping me. I don't think that's that's possible. And so I would leave that up to the person to make that decision for themselves. And yeah, like I don't really see how else you would go about that sort of interaction, because you can all, I think, like I would say Destiny and I agree on trying to help these people, but let's not fucking pretend that this isn't like that like this is good advice in the sense of like, oh, like I'm not being as hyperbolic as possible and calling like someone a retarded child because like they were like talking on Twitter about like what happened to them because they got like sexually assaulted. So like I don't think that's much of an argument for that. But I agree that we can encourage people to do better, but that just doesn't really, it doesn't mean a lot to me, if that makes sense.
Sure. So, something I wanted to talk about was when you were talking about with the 100% certainty. It is to my knowledge, at least, that it's not Destiny's position that it has to be 100% certainty. Because I gotta say, I think for the most part, I agree with Destiny. It's that it would be more over whether or not you have reason to believe otherwise. That's it. So it's not reasonable to blame somebody for going into their first interaction and being awkward and you know, freezing up or whatever, right? You can do whatever, you know. You have a fucking heart attack. I'm not going to blame you for that. But it's when you have reason to believe that you are no longer capable of doing that by either experience or you know, anything else. Let's say similar circumstances, that I would say then you should take precautions, like maybe not having casual sex. I would say if you have reason to believe that you can't do that, you shouldn't do that. You understand?
So, yes, but what I would say is the possibility for that is always going to be there. Like for the example that I normally like use is that I like had a ton of casual sex in college, right?
Yeah.
Like never was a problem. No one ever like fucked with me, right? Like plenty of partners. I got like sexually assaulted last year, and everything was fine. Like it was completely normal. Like I did all the normal boxes that I checked. You know, I made sure like about them. Like I made sure about like the place we were meeting. Like da 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 da. Like I let someone know where I was going. Like all that sort of stuff. And it still happened to me. And so it's, for me it feels kind of impossible to know specifically. And I would say in that specific case, at that point, because I've always felt like, I think you've seen me like argue like that I'm pretty fine with confrontation, and just like in that specific moment I did like freeze up, right?
Sure.
So I think there's always going to be the threat, and I would say that it's an individual calculus about how confident you feel or how willing you are to put yourself out there, knowing that this can potentially happen, and depending on how, like say, what your capabilities are,
So
how you're going to be able to respond.
Yeah,
Like,
that's not a conflict with destiny or my position. It's the position is quite simple. If you have reason to believe, so like in the case in the issuance that you went through, destiny and mine, if it's in line with what destiny's been saying, I'm not going to necessarily speak on his behalf entirely, just in line with what he's saying throughout the conversation. As far as I've been it, it's just this simple. If you froze up during this conversation, do some introspection, figure out what went wrong, figure out what happened before you jump into another casual sexual interaction. And if you believe that you have done enough introspection and that you've done the work or whatever necessary to be able to figure out what went wrong, or that maybe how to rectify this problem in the future, maybe then you can engage in casual sexual interactions again. That's
like,
it.
that's entirely possible, but I would say if we're actually trying to say like give advice to this person, then we're doing it entirely wrong. And we've essentially like made this person
Oh
like
yeah,
look, yeah, yeah,
I won't
like,
disagree with the rhetoric
y-
and shit like that, making it seem like yeah, yeah,
okay,
I'm not gonna
like
disagree with that.
because that, but like part of the problem is that that really feels, at least like in my view, that it undermines what like our supposed goal is, which is like supposedly to help this person, right? Like, oh, like, like, hey, this happened to you, I'm trying to help you either by telling you to abstain or telling you to get some sort of assistance so you can be more confident. And like I found that very frustrating. And like I want to be clear for everybody, like I'm not trying to fucking cancel Destiny, right? Like people are like trying to like are saying that, I'm like, I don't know what, like how I'm supposed to like respond. So it just like I I still think he's wrong. I would say explicitly in how he went about this, but I'd also say that I think we do have different positions on like what we consider to be acceptable, and I'm more comfortable, say, giving more leeway to people that if you feel like you're capable enough or you're okay with like a certain degree of things, that you can do that. And like I would say he probably disagrees. So I'm just like I feel like we do have like an
Yeah,
explicit difference
so
like in that area.
I wanted to talk to you about that. At what point in time in the future are we going to expect that people should have to intervene when something is going on that they set the boundaries to not have happen? Or is that just never going to happen in your mind?
Sorry, can you say that again? I
So,
got
like,
distracted
if
by it.
let's say somebody is doing something that I explicitly told them not to in a sexual activity, when is going to be the date that we choose to have the expectation be that you should speak up about it? Like, is it like
I
gonna
would
be like 20 years in the future or something? Like, what is the marker that you're looking for? Lower.
Okay, so I think like we're actually kind of like moving towards that like timeline already, because I would say that currently, or at least like recently, we've evolved pretty well in regards to having people be able to communicate, at least like beforehand, like in regards to like casual sex, right? I haven't seen like all the specific numbers on this one yet, right? Maybe I'm super off base, but I'm fairly certain that people haven't been like getting uh like mega ultra giga raped since like just be like in recent years, right? Like I'm pretty sure like rape and sexual assault have always been a problem in America. Like spousal rape's always been a problem in America. Like there's plenty of things that make this sort of problem worse.
Mm-hmm.
So I think right now we have like I'd say evolved a bit as a society in a good way, in a positive way, that we are more confident saying like what people's boundaries are, saying like, oh, how often I would say recently, sorry, like say 20 years ago, would say people say have a conversation beforehand, like, hey, like I'm okay with this during sex, I'm not okay with this during sex, right? I don't think that like was ever even on the table. So I would say that we've had some positive evolution in that regard. But no, I think you're right in that if we want to have a more open sexual society, we have to keep pushing in regards to like say helping people get better at expressing themselves, right? Because
Sure.
a lot of this is say a failure of communication. But in the meantime, I don't think we should say go back to like
Well,
1950s style like social like norms and saying like, oh hey, like unless you're like super like 100% certain that you can stop or fight off a rapist, that like you should be able to like like
so
have
I
casual
feel like the
sex.
point of contention is whether or not that's going back or going forward. I would say it's necessarily, excuse me, necessarily going forward. I think an ideal society is one where in which people are expected to say something if somebody pushes their sexual boundaries. I think that is an ideal society, and therefore it would be forward-reaching, not reaching into the past. I think Destiny would probably agree with that and said as much inside of the conversation. Do you disagree?
Sorry, so getting more people like better at communicating, yeah, I would say that it is a forward thing. I'd say we're getting closer to that.
Okay.
But I would say like in pursuit of that, we're currently doing, or what has currently happened, is the absolute opposite of that, like in every way. I don't think this has been like a helpful conversation for these people or this person in particular, if that makes sense.
I mean, yeah, I think that has to do primarily with the rhetoric, though. I think if the rhetoric behind what was happening here was changed, I think a lot of people would be a little bit more receptive. Or sorry,
Well,
quite a bit.
obviously, right? Like if you but obviously, like the reason why we're having this discourse at all is if we had started saying, oh, hey, like if you had like if like you had a bad sexual experience, like we should probably evaluate, like hey, how did this happen? Are there things that you feel like you were uncomfortable doing in the time that maybe like would have helped deal with this? Like, are there ways like looking in the future? Yeah, but no, that didn't happen. He called her a retarded child and said like never have sex again. Like what? Like so? Yeah, of course. It like but I would say like the tone of that like absolutely matters for the purpose of this conversation. Like yeah, people are gonna get more angry
Well,
when you say
yeah,
that to them.
if that's going to be the big point of contention, then it would be a debate about rhetoric, not a debate about substance. You seem to disagree with the substance, even though.
Well, yeah, yeah. I have a mild disagreement on the substance, where I would say that is the person's choice. If they once they so I have a baseline where my baseline isn't. I don't expect every person to be able to have a verbal confrontation with somebody during sex, right?
Yep.
That's not my baseline. But what is my baseline um, is being able to communicate in some way, either before or after that interaction happens. And at that point, I'd be comfortable saying, all right, like if you're not doing this now, maybe reconsider what's going on with you. And I'd be comfortable saying that. If
Sorry,
like
one more time.
so my current baseline is
Yeah.
like I think I said this during the debate, but I can restate here. Where it's like so I think there's like say four components of like a potential responsibility for someone who's engaging, right? As long as they're not being a rapist, right? Or you can even say that the rapist like fits into this one too. So step one, make sure you're not actively raping people. It's like the baby's first thing, like what they teach you in college, like hey, don't have sex with drunk people or people, someone who's like passed out drunk or someone who's sleeping, right? Like easy shit like that. That's like where you start.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second level, which is my level, which is be able to communicate either beforehand, which this person did, or during, if you didn't communicate beforehand, what you want happening. And
Mm-hmm.
I would say that if you can hit one of those things, then I think, all right, you're already more mature and able to communicate your desires better than like 90% of people who engage like in sexual activity. Go nuts. And then I would say that the next levels are being able to have a verbal confrontation and then being able to have a physical confrontation. And so with those like different like specs, at that point I would just say, hey, like if you can't have that, fuck, uh, if you can't have that, just realize the risks and we can try and help you. But I'm not going to say hold it against you if you're unable to do it. Does that help?
Well, my real thing is kind of back to the previous question. At what point, if any, do you believe you would add the necessity for people to communicate that something has crossed their boundary during sexual activity? So, like, say, no, I didn't agree to that.
I'm not sure if we can like say mandate that or have like some sort of system of understanding, but I think we could say culturally encourage that.
Well, yeah.
That
So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
in the context of this, because that's what Destiny is doing. He's saying we should have a social
Okay.
expectation.
Like if this is like the way that we're socially encouraging it, then I absolutely disagree. Like this is 100% fucking wrong. Like the
Sorry,
person is obviously no, because if we're going to socially encourage us, like we have to talk about how we do the social encouraging. Let's not pretend like that like it doesn't matter. You can't just say like you can say something a million different ways.
So yeah, I'm not talking about rhetorically. What I'm trying to say is that would you agree with Destiny's position that we should be expected to be able to push back when somebody's trying to push on our boundaries? At what point, like, what are you looking for societally? To what box are you looking to be checked before you say, okay, society is now at a good point. I think we can establish a baseline rule that you should, before you engage in sexual activity, be willing to state no if somebody is actively like trying to do something to you sexually.
Sorry, you mean during, not before, right?
Sorry,
like,
yeah, during, correct.
I'm not sure if we can ever like say with 100% certainty like make that, but like I would say the most important thing that I would probably be Um, what I would encourage first, right, is have more people be able to talk about their boundaries before. And I know you're having a conversation with Chad about like how, hey, like, if we're telling people the no means no meme, and then like we're mind fucking guys by saying, oh, hey, like, it doesn't always mean that, then yeah, of
Mm.
course, we need to find some way to like fix that. And that's something that like, oh yeah, that's something that Squad W can absolutely fix, right?
Yeah.
So there's plenty of like ways for us to make this better. But I would say that right now, this is not the way. And if we're going to make that, I would start with I would try and get everyone to the basic level of like my two steps first. Cause I honestly feel like a lot of people aren't even capable of doing that. A lot of people aren't capable of saying like beforehand, like this is what I'm okay with, this is what I'm not okay with. Like people seem kind of get to be squeamish about that, and that's really annoying.
Sure.
So
Then
I would
can I ask
so
you one
go
question in
ahead.
response to what is
Yeah,
the
of course.
negative repercussion of expecting people to speak up when something has happened to them sexually, and when such an occurrence is not the case, like you find yourself incapable of speaking up when something is sexually
Um, uh,
uncomfortable to you, that you reevaluate what went wrong and how to rectify it.
I would say the
What is
explicit.
wrong with that expectation? What
I would
is the negative?
I would say there's nothing inherently wrong with the expectation, but I think it's been pretty well demonstrated that how that expectation is stated
Okay.
like absolutely affects
Yep. I
like
don't.
how yeah
Yep.
okay so that's like also that's important. So I can say
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing inherently wrong with that part. I would say like that's a worthy thing to get to. It just I'm currently not there in terms of what I expect. I'm not sure what the
Right.
specific timeline for that is. But then I would also say that like the negative consequence of that right now is the way that we encourage that absolutely has negative effects. Like if a woman says, "Oh, yo, I was like, stealth. I feel really fucking bad about myself," and someone's like, "Yo, you're fucking retarded." Like, yeah, of course,
Sure.
that person's gonna like have a like an even worse fucking experience. So we need to be cognizant of that, and not be like, "Oh, hey,
Okay,
like, things are like kind of bad
I'm trying to
sometimes."
divorce it away from the rhetoric unless you believe there is no way rhetorically to make this claim that isn't wrong, which
No,
I am.
there are absolutely ways
Okay,
rhetorically
so
like to,
then
to
I.
like encourage people, and
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you those right now. But like a lot of those ways are not the ways that like discourse like online happens, and so saying that, oh, hey, this is a bad like we're doing the technically right thing on paper, but the way we're doing it like is absolutely incongruent with like the stated goals of that, which is we want people to like be comfortable having those talks and getting people like to understand like the problem with that. We probably shouldn't lead with, yo, you're like a brain dead child who can't who shouldn't be able to go outside,
Okay,
right?
so
So like
okay, so if you believe that it's we're rhetorically capable of doing it in a way that isn't inflammatory and things, because I won't disagree with you. Destiny was not almost as inflammatory as you can get, but like he was
pretty inflammatory.
really bad, right? Really bad. Like no productive shit was coming out of this in any fathomable reality. When it came to the discourse, right? I think we can both agree on that. So, with that being the case, right? If we agree that there can be a positive rhetorical strategy for how to communicate this to people, and as you said a moment ago, you don't see a downside to this being the case if we employ said rhetorical strategies, can you see the upsides to employing this kind of a strategy and how people can benefit from these ideas to introspect on their incapabilities to be able to voice their concerns during sexual intercourse? Do you think that could benefit people?
They could benefit people, but I would say that it has to be a much more controlled environment than what we're currently doing. I don't think if we're going to take that stance that we should hide behind saying, "Oh, hey, you said it in a public like space, so I can like respond however I want." Like if like your stated goal is to help people, then like you definitely should be like tailoring your rhetoric to like give good
Again,
advice to to those
I want to
individuals.
state that that we're assuming a perfect rhetorician or whatever the fuck you want to say, somebody
Okay,
that's elegant and eloquent in all of their speech, right, doing it to the
based in
highest level,
poggers.
right, highest level of perfection that you can perceive of. If this is the case, we have good rhetoric, and we now have established that there is an understanding that this could benefit people, and you don't see a negative. Why wouldn't we establish this tomorrow? But our only major caveat being you have to be razor precise in your rhetoric.
Um, I think we already kind of like have that with like say like sex therapists or people who do talk about that in a way that is like considerably more healthy.
He's being a
I
total
think a lot
idiot.
of
He
people
said, I
currently
was wrong and
do
a
that.
moron. I'm sorry and I apologize for my
I would
ridiculous
say a lot of
comments
people
to the actual
currently
person, as we're not talking about only
meet your
hypothetical
standards with
scenario. That
that.
might or not happen
It's
as we have our
just in
statements
this
what happened
specific
to him.
case, I would say Destiny fails.
Okay, I'm not going to disagree with you. Destiny
Oh,
fails rhetorically to be able to
okay,
communicate all these things.
which is why I said like I think I said this during the debate where I'm like, yo, like if we can encourage people to like like be more communicative, sure, but like I would say one, the way you do that matters, but like even for the non-rhetoric Andes, that's entirely divergent from my initial point, which is I don't currently think we're there and I have a different baseline. And once we hit my baseline, I'm happy to keep pushing. I'm happy to keep pushing for both. But I think my specific one is more realistic in the meantime.
So let's say that I wanted to make the statements that I have right now that are similar to Destiny's in the way that I've done it. Let's say I tweet that I believe that we should encourage people when they find themselves stun locked, or, if I want to use Twitch terms, stun locked or otherwise incapable of being able to communicate their boundaries during sexual activity once they've been crossed. I think that we should try our best to be able to understand why we've done that and how to be more comfortable doing that in the future. Would you say that that is a bad post?
No.
Okay, if that is not a bad post, then you agree with Destiny. You just don't like the way
No.
he said it.
No. Oh my God. I agree with the initial sentiment. I just said this before, where that's like again, we're pushing for that, but I think that's past the point that I'm currently like okay with accepting in regards
Yeah,
to allowing people to. So no, but those are
I'm
different
asking you
positions
why,
then.
though.
I'm asking why because I think one is more difficult to maintain. I think it's easier to expect people to be able to say beforehand or when things aren't actively bad to be able to communicate what they want. I think it's a different level when someone
Yep.
acts upon you in a negative way
Yep.
to be able to respond. And so I'm saying that those are different things. One is easier and we can push for both, but I am like at this specific time, I think the other one is a more reasonable goal to get everyone to first. I think a lot of times a lot of people will be better off with that if we have better communication out the gate.
Can you give me a good reason why we can't do both?
We can do both. I'm just saying that I have like that I think
Okay.
one is a more reasonable goal
I
like
don't
to
disagree
reach.
with you.
Yeah, okay, cool. Well, then like so we don't disagree. But in that case, I say I do disagree that I'm still okay with allowing people to make that choice for themselves whether they want to be able to do that if they reach my specific goal, which is that you're able to communicate either before or during what your boundaries are. I think it's a fine baseline. I don't think I'd say most people aren't even there at that part yet. So I would say we should probably try and get there. And then afterwards, of course. But I feel
So
like
then-
at that point
So then I don't understand where is the problem that you're having with this take is then coming from? Where's the problem with the take? If the take is that we should be able to say that people who engage in sexual activity and freeze up should do introspection to make sure it doesn't happen again before they engage in another form of casual sex, not that they should never be allowed to have casual sex again, but they should do the proper introspection before they engage in it again, which is, in my opinion, incredibly fine advice. If that is some advice that we want to give to people, what is the problem? Where's the issue besides the rhetoric? What is the issue?
the issue aside from the rhetoric, I don't think you can really if your goal is to encourage people, I don't think you can get rid of like because again, like our stated goal, right, is improving people's ability to communicate during sex. Be able
Yeah.
to communicate
Correct.
if that is your goal, I would say that in this case your rhetoric is like intrinsically tied to you being able to make that
Of
like
course it is.
happen like positively.
Yep.
So yeah, like so if we 100% like if this woman said this thing and then someone said, "Hey, I hope you're doing okay. What happened to you wasn't fair. Someone like broke past your boundaries. You weren't able to accurately defend yourself." Maybe take some time to think about how this happened to you and we can do better. That's great. Like, but we know that's not what happened. And so how we do that, like, encouraging, let's call that like step 3, right? Because if like with my 4-step system.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So I agree that yes, we're encouraging step 3 and how we encourage step 3 matters because there's a lot of stuff tied up in that for a lot of people. But I would say what I'm most focused on, what I'm currently okay with and what my like baseline is having steps 1 and 2 done. And so I would say that's different because if Destiny says you have to have step 3 ready or you can't have casual sex, I would say we do have a different position. And I would say I'm comfortable in my endless hedonism, like allowing people to make that decision for themselves, especially
So,
especially for a lot of people. And really, I think this is kind of important that most people don't know for sure whether they're able to have that confrontation in the moment. Like I've had like again, like I said, I've literally had physical fights and like
okay.
and I yeah.
So I'm trying to, so think of me as trying to seal man the position, right, to the best of my ability, and stuff like this. I agree that if you have no information otherwise, the entire point is predicated on information. It's entirely predicated on information. The whole point is that if you have information that you believe shows that you would be incapable of speaking up inside of a sexual encounter, that you should not engage inside of that sexual activity, especially with the agreed upon rate that you had previously agreed to, that 70% of dudes are going to push on you. It's no longer just like a maybe thing. It is a probability. You are probably going to incur somebody doing this to you. And if that is the case, I don't know how we can, in good faith, say that you should not be expected to have the proper, I don't want to say training, but the proper tools to be able to deal with that situation if it were to arise. If you say it occurs at a 70% rate.
So I think we have to make it like a specific like qualification for this. When we say a guy is pushing, a lot of times that means a guy is asking to do something. He doesn't just do it.
It was to my knowledge that you were agreeing on something separate. So we won't use the 70% number then.
Okay. Because like I would say, yeah, sure, a lot of guys ask to do something during sex, but I would say 70% of guys would not explicitly violate someone's boundary. Like if they knew that person said that before. Like if someone said, yo, don't stealth me, I would be extremely uncomfortable saying that 70% of men would like literally try and stealth somebody or something equivalent, right? So I think that's a different conversation. Like so again, and this goes back into the context. If the first thing is someone's like, yo, can I put it in your ass? And then at that point, I would say at this point, say the vast majority of people, including women, would probably be able to say no. But once someone breaks that boundary without like asking, you're in an entirely different environment. Someone has like already violated you in a specific way, and now you're going to like, and that dynamic has changed at that point. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Like, it's one thing if someone asks you something and you say no, but it's nothing if someone just does it and then you were expected to stop them, right? It's like the difference.
Okay, so would you say then that we should expect that people do that? That if you have not explicitly stated a boundary, and that somebody does something that you're uncomfortable with, should there be the expectation that you say no?
Yeah, I'll bite this bullet and I'll say, if someone asks you during sex, can I do this? Yeah, that's your responsibility to say yes or no.
Okay, what about if they don't ask?
If they don't ask, I think that makes it a lot harder for someone like to be able to like to have that like to say that like no, to have that like potential confrontation. I would, if someone asks you and you can't say like you're mute or something, or you can't like communicate, at that point, I would be comfortable saying that like that's kind of on you. If you can't even talk to somebody or say answer a basic question. But I think that's entirely different than someone going past and then you having to rein them in or stop them. Those are very different things.
Why wouldn't you? Okay.
Sorry, which is why like it's frustrating because I feel like I do have standards for this sort of thing, but I feel like my expectations are slightly different because, and again, this feels like an entirely personal thing where it's like I don't think you can know like with absolute certainty at all like how you're going to respond if someone explicitly violates your boundaries in that way.
I don't think, again, it's not about whether or not that's not relevant. We agree on that. It's not relevant to either one of our positions. It's not about whether or not you know with absolute certainty. It's whether you have reason to believe. You can't know anything with absolute certainty, right? We don't know if the fucking there's a big ass fucking delta ray or some whatever gamma ray bullshit is about to hit the earth and scorch it like instantaneously.
I understand what you mean, but I would say like the most I would give for that line is no, I don't expect someone who's just been like violated to have the wherewithal to like have that conversation in the moment.
So so then I'm gonna get into like why is it that we shouldn't put the expectation onto people that they should consistently better themselves if this were to occur. I'm not saying that there is no way that you could ever have casual sex in the future or whatever, but that if you are going to have casual sex again, you should do your best to minimize what made you freeze in the first place. You understand? Well, how is that expectation bad to set onto people? How is that an unjust expectation to set?
How do you minimize? Because really, I would say
it depends on what your problem is.
It depends on what your problem is, but I would say if the explicit thing that like is really hard for you to overcome is someone say like explicitly violating your boundaries, like say during a sexual encounter, then I'm not sure how someone practices that.
There could be multiple different ways that you could practice that. You could practice being more assertive. Like I even suggested, even by simply asking people out and getting out of your comfort zone and be willing to to do stuff like that can be a good baseline, and you could build your way up to things that are far more uncomfortable for you to do that really, practice assertiveness.
I understand what you're saying. I'm telling you that like those are completely different environments, and you can say like have general confidence increase, but I would say that specific environment is very different. And again, this is like, I know this is touchy-feely bullshit, right? But it's very like I'm not entirely certain people who haven't had this happen to them understand what can like go on, like and how that affects your ability to say no. If someone asks me, if someone like wants to stick a dick in my ass, I'm totally fine telling that person like to fuck off, right? But if someone like just does it, then that's an entirely different thing. And like I would say most people are dramatically unprepared for that. You can't particularly prepare for that. And at that point, I don't think in that case you freezing up, I think say we can encourage it, but I don't think you freezing up in that instance disqualifies you from like being like able to have sex. So what you're essentially saying is that if you can't respond after someone say like at the very least sexually assaults you, then you shouldn't be having sex. I don't know what
I'm saying is if you can't improve your response, then you shouldn't be having sex. If there is nothing in material reality you can do to improve your response to somebody sexually assaulting you or somebody crossing a boundary that you have, I don't believe you should be engaging in casual sexual activity. And I think that is a fair line to set for any human. I think that is a fair line to set for any person. All you have to do is try.
You can try and improve, but it seems like this woman has had say like things happen to her multiple times, and she's tried it. I assume she's tried to like steel herself or like be better like at different times, and she's been able to speak out like in different interactions. It's not like the same thing every single time, and so like, and I would say most people, especially those who haven't had this happen to them, are confident that if something like this happens, that you'll say something, right? No one thinks that they're like unwilling to have that confrontation.
But when ass meets grass and it happens, try your best to improve and make sure that you do critical thinking as to what I'm trying to say is don't just keep hitting your head against the rock. Oh, well, I didn't say something and I froze up this time. Better just get on Tinder and go at it again. No, figure out why you didn't say something. Figure out what went wrong. Why did you freeze? Why weren't you capable of doing this? That's all that I'm asking, period. Front, stop, and center. That's it. Just improve yourself, maximize your viability and not getting sexually assaulted again. And that's it. And if you cannot do that,
so I agree with you. We can tell them like to improve, but really, what I'm saying is, I don't think there's an environment to explicitly improve on your ability to like to stop that, and that every situation where that can potentially happen is different, right? Like, and like I've been able to like say push someone say like off of me at a party before, and that didn't like bother me, right? But like when I was say in the middle of having sex with somebody and they started doing a lot of stuff that I did not like, and I was unable to do anything. And so you can always say like do your best, try and improve, say hey, what led you to this like spot, what's going on there. Then I would say like if you're trying, then that's fine. But I would also say that just being able to say no, if we did like, I remember, I'm not sure if you got to this part of the debate yet, where it's like, oh, if you say no and he keeps going, then you're just going to get raped anyway. Then being confident in that, then that's just an argument against casual sex in general. That's not an argument against like a person being able to communicate no during that conversation.
Well, sure.
So I can agree with you that we should always encourage people to say take better care of themselves. But I don't think it's reasonable to expect every person that once they've been violated to have to be able to have that aggressive like a response. I don't think that's fair. And I wouldn't deny somebody if they choose to keep doing this sort of activity, then I wouldn't say no, you're not allowed to do that.
Why would you encourage somebody who is incapable of being able to sustain boundaries and maintain boundaries during casual sexual activity to continue having casual sexual activity?
I don't think I'm encouraging it. I think I'm just allowing it. I think
okay. Why hold on. You understand when you say that something is okay or permissible, that you are giving some kind of tacit endorsement. That is tacit endorsement by definition, right? That you are saying that that's fine for you. Yeah, well, nobody's arguing for physically stopping anybody. I don't think the 5'6" Stephen Kenneth Destiny Bennell is going to fucking paratroop his way into somebody's house and try and stop somebody from doing anything. Okay? I don't think that's going to happen. So we're not talking about physically stopping people. We're talking about whether or not we would say that you ought morally continue your casual sexual behavior. So I want you to tell me why you believe somebody ought to be able to continue having casual sexual behavior if they are incapable of maintaining boundaries that they have set. Why ought that person be able to continue doing that?
Because if they feel, if this is like an adult person that is like capable of like self-reflection, right? If they feel like the benefits of their actions in this specific case and them continuing to participate in casual sex is better for them than not, then I would say that's fine. I would encourage them, hey, you should probably get better at this, but I'm not going to say, no, you're not allowed to do this. I am permissive in the sense that like if they think that they can do it and they think that doing what they say that with their limited capacity, then that's fine. Because I could say I could like add this like I could, because I feel like I can add further qualifications where it's like, hey, if you're not willing to say fight a potential rapist, don't have sex with anybody because you could potentially be raped, right? So like what I'm asking is that this line feels like, I feel like my line is very reasonable where it's like, oh, hey, if someone asks you about doing something during sex and you're able to say no, then that's cool. But if someone explicitly starts doing a lot of shit to you that you don't like, that you have to be willing to like have like a confrontation, then I guess my question would be like, why do we stop at the verbal thing? Why don't we say you have to be willing to have like a physical altercation every time you have sex before you're allowed to have sex?
Because a physical altercation has a higher probability of resulting in physical trauma to another person, physical damage or otherwise. I believe that unless you have information that indicates that saying no to somebody has a probability, like a fair probability, or it's like it's probable to happen that you will get physically assaulted or raped, then I don't see an argument for this point.
Well, really, then I feel like if the difference is you're able to say no after someone starts pushing past your boundaries, versus you're willing to say no if someone asks about pushing a boundary. I would say if we're doing the rapist want to rape meme, then I would say that if a rapist wanted to rape somebody, whether they were able to do my position or your and Destiny's position, it wouldn't reduce any rapes. It wouldn't say stop.
I'm not trying to say the rapist is just going to rape. I don't believe that.
No. But what I'm saying is like, I think, and this happened during the conversation where it's like if someone says no, and the person like keeps raping them, Destiny said like, oh, they'll just be raped anyway. But like, okay, so if the only like thing that it could potentially stop, right, are the people that are doing it, say, unintentionally, or the people who are doing it intentionally but would be scared off by a confrontation, then you could say, yes, there is a higher risk. But I would say if you're okay with that higher risk, if you're incapable of doing that, then you can still do that. It's not
like about whether or not you can, it's whether or not we would encourage this as being an action that you ought do. Do you believe it would? Okay, let's put it in different terms.
No, really. Like, I know what you're about to ask. Yes, there will be more people who are potentially like assaulted under my system, but I would say that the benefit, and this is a bullet I'm biting right now, is that the benefit of people being able to have that casual sex and being able to have like a more free society with that outweighs the negatives, and we can currently try and fix like the problems like that you and I have already described. That is my position.
Okay, my position is that the negatives that you're describing don't really exist. I think there's plenty of people that are perfectly capable of improving their confidence or assertiveness inside of sexual activity. I don't think that there's very many people that can do literally nothing about it, even through introspection. I don't buy that, honestly, for a moment. I think there are plenty of people that, I agree, do not know whether or not they're capable of doing it. I would argue you don't really know until you're in that situation, right? I would argue that that certainly is the case. And with that being the case, once you have information showing that you are not capable of being able to do it, or capable of being able to do it, but more specifically showing that you are incapable of doing it, you should take a look at and evaluate, hey, what went wrong? What happened? What went wrong? What can I do to better myself? That's all that I'm stating. And if you are incapable of doing that, if you are incapable of establishing anything going wrong, and you notice a pattern of this happening, then you should not be having casual sexual activity. Because you should understand that your capability to do this is definitely hindered, or you're just incapable of doing it, and that this is not the type of thing for you. Right? I think that this would minimize the amount of sexual victimizations. I think this would maximize our prescribed necessity for communication between partners, not only helping potential victims, but also potentially helping the individuals who are like the individuals who are sailing as well in some situations. As I talked about with the Abba and Preach example that I've given before, there are moments where, or there are times where in which people are told certain things like no or whatever, right? You were there. You said you heard about it, right? The Abba and Preach shit. And when they're told no, and then they're otherwise told, oh, fuck, you shouldn't have taken that no as a real answer, communicating with them that actually that's not the way that the world operates for plenty of people, and we shouldn't do it that way.
Then like if we agree that that's a bad thing, and that women shouldn't do like the no, but I want you to keep going meme, and that's like a change that we would socially encourage on women. We shouldn't because if someone says no, they want you to keep going, then like what's the actual no? Because then this just goes up to like better communication.
I mean, that was part of my point. That was part of my point.
But if it's all, but again, like, so yes, better communication is better. But what I'm saying is I hold a different standard for what I expect from people than you do. And like that's fine. I think my system, while it is potentially more dangerous, I would say lets a lot more people participate, because I don't think there's like that many rapists out there. I don't necessarily disagree with you. Yeah. Right. So if like say like you take 10 people and 9 of them are able to have sex under my system, and 2 of them are able to have sex under your and D's system, and like can
we just call it my system? I was just referring to specific points.
Sorry. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then if the 6 people who would be confident under my system and capable like under my guidelines want to be able to do that, then that's fine. Like then I'm willing to let them do that. I'm willing to say that you are allowed to do that. If you feel like, if you're telling me that you are 100% certain that you're not going to be able to like say stop somebody, and you like literally are just like say like a rape victim willing to happen, then like I would say, hey, maybe you shouldn't do that. But if again, I would say most people have a reasonable understanding that they might be able to say no in those scenarios, and I can't expect them to, and I don't have an expectation of them to say yes.
Okay, I think we've already cleared up our main disagreement. When I say you ought not do this, this is with the my Discord, not yours, the expectation that you are not wanting to get sexually assaulted, or that you're not okay with it. But what you said is that while it may lead to more sexual victimizations, if somebody is willingly going, hey, I recognize that I'm going to get sexually assaulted here, right?
I'm potentially going to.
Yeah, sorry, I'm potentially going to get sexually assaulted here because I have like something that I'm unwilling to be able to fix inside of my shit, and they make that moral calculus in their own mind. Yeah, my moral prescriptions are just based off of the idea, the premise, that you don't want to be sexually victimized and minimize your chance of being sexually victimized to the highest degree. And the highest degree would include you not having sexual activity under that circumstance, and just have different sex with a more...
I would say that
you understand more.
I guess like my basic question is just that it feels like if we really want to reduce like all the sexual like violence, right? We should just tell people not to have not to have sex at all, and then like we'll reduce it so low to the point where people will only be someone like explicitly forces themselves upon them, right? Like, does that make like? So what I'm saying is like it feels odd if we're saying
it's all about something that I believe is within.
I know it's a calculus. I know it's a calculus on your end too. So I think we disagree with like where that calculus goes and like which is more beneficial and what's I would say more realistic right now.
No, and I don't know how you believe it's not realistic for us to say if you want to not get sexually assaulted, a very simple and easy thing you can do is just look at, hey, if you freeze up during these interactions, what went wrong? How can I better myself? I don't know how you could say that that isn't something realistic that people can do. How is that unrealistic for humans to do?
I guess my question then, like my issue with this is that most people, like I would say most people who get sexually assaulted, most likely are only getting like sexually assaulted like once. And so until you get sexually assaulted, you can't know how you're going to react in that situation. Sure. And so then my question then is, we like because like I didn't think I was going to freeze up when that happened to me, right? Sure. So it's like, and I've like say like pushed people off of me like in other scenarios before. So it's like I was under every like illusion that I was going to be fine like in that scenario and I would be able to handle myself. And I would say every person until they get sexually assaulted is of the same mind. And so we can't know until someone gets sexually assaulted whether they are capable of doing that in that moment. And then every person, I would argue, who gets sexually assaulted that like has a non-zero chance of being able to say no the next time, especially if we give them say like constructive criticism. But like my question is that every person who hasn't been sexually assaulted yet, we have no clue how they're going to react. Like in the case of that. So it feels like, how do we prevent that? If your prescription is only say like after you've been sexually assaulted, you should probably wait until you feel more like comfortable.
No, it's about the information that you have.
I would say that in general, but like really, I would say that like I would say that people don't know whether like how they're going to respond until like after it's already happened to them. Like everyone can say like, oh yeah, like I'd be a Giga Chad and just like, like rip his dick off and like say like stop doing this. But like that's not how it happens. So if every person is a potentially like say like victim and we can't be like a certain, then it seems like my system works like I would say like probably about as equivalently as yours, at least for like the people who haven't been sexually assaulted yet. Like, hey, if you feel like you can communicate and you don't know whether you can like 100% say no or not, because no one does, it's up to you to make your own calculus. So I would like, and then after.
So it's all about the information that you have. Do you have information to indicate that you would not be able to do this? If you believe that it is the case, whether it's a past experience or not, that you have information indicating that you are incapable of maintaining consent inside of a sexual scenario, then you should do your best to be able to rectify that problem. That is it. What is wrong with that?
There's nothing inherently wrong with that advice, and I've told you this. I just don't think it's like say, like reasonable, like to expect every person to be able to do that now. Or
how is it unreasonable to expect people to do that?
Because I'm not trying to be rude, okay? But because if you're being in the middle of being like sexually assaulted, even if you think you like are able to handle it or you have training or you're a big strong guy who's like been able to do that stuff before, you don't fucking know.
I know you don't know, but you can take reasonable. You can do.
Cool. And then someone takes the reasonable steps, and it still happens. If someone takes the reasonable steps,
then guess what? You don't give up. You don't give up, Hans. You don't give up. You keep trying.
I understand that, Relly.
That's the whole point. Then you agree with my point.
No, we encourage people, but I don't hold people to that standard that they have to like do that. Because it's fucking impossible to know.
Wait, no, Hans. Why wouldn't you? No. You're constantly misremembering. I don't know. I'll give you credit. I'll say maybe you're misremembering my statement. I never said you'd go through it with 100% certainty. You go with the best information you have available. All right? And the best information you have available says you are compromising this. All I am stating is that not that you don't give up every single time. Let's say you try your best to be able to rectify the problem. You try your best to be able to try and figure out what went wrong. How could I be more assertive inside the future? Let's say it goes south another time. All right? You keep trying. You keep trying. You keep trying. You you keep trying, and you keep trying. You don't just give up and say, you know what, fuck it, it doesn't really matter. I'm just not going to care about this. Unless you want to do the moral
when did it
calculus.
say it doesn't matter?
Because that is the only difference in our points. Is I am saying that you don't stop trying. Just keep looking for the reason to be able to do it.
But
that's all
again,
I'm saying. You try the best you can do is all you can do, Hanz.
So that we're both just saying that, like, if you have a reasonable, like, inkling that you're going to be able to, like, push back against sexual assault, you should be fine. But, like, everyone thinks that they're going to be able to do that until after they've been sexually assaulted.
Until you have information to be able to say otherwise, yes.